Hello everyone, Tina here. I hope you're having a great day. Thanks for joining me. Today I get to share with you a project using some brand new items from the LDRS Creative shop. This is the Love and Bloom stamp set. It's a layering stamp set and it has some beautiful roses on there. Beautiful sentiments as well. So we'll be using that. We're also going to be using a brand new die set that is called the Eyelet Lace Rectangle Die set. It's a 3-piece set and has a coordinating tag that matches the eyelet background one. So we're going to be using those today. We're going to jump in and get started. These are clear photopolymer stamps which are stamped beautifully. Now I'm going to be using quite a few of these little mini ink cube sets, and I'll list them down below. But I chose some colors. I have a flesh color, I have a pink tutu, and then I'm also going to bring in Lipstick Jungle. The pink tutu, Lipstick Jungle are both pink inks, and then the flesh is like a, well, flesh colored of course. But I'm going to be using these three to create like a corally color rose. So starting with my flesh ink, I'm going to take the solid image that's in the stamp set of the rose. I'm going to stamp that twice. And the rose has 3 layers, and then there's a little rosebud that just has 2 layers. I'm just going to clean off this one, and I want to put this back. I want to put it back exactly the way it was mounted on there. Because this is going to help me later on when I do my layering. But I'll take the smallest rosebud, and we're going to stamp the same ink 3 times with the solid image. I'm trying to space it a little bit because I know I want to add some stems, so I didn't want them overlapping. Okay, next we'll take the second layer of the rose. I'm going to go in with my pink tutu ink, and I'm going to stamp that. And I'm using the front of the stamp set kind of as a guide because that will tell you where to stamp or where to layer. So we'll ink that up again and stamp our second rose. When you add an orange and a pink together, I think it creates the most beautiful color. I love coral or salmon color, and so we're going to make some of those colored roses. I'm going to take the second layer of the rosebud and stamp that with my pink tutu ink, but it was too light, so we're going to go in and stamp with a darker ink later on. Now we're going to take the third layer for our largest rose here. We're going to use Lipstick Jungle. Isn't the cutest names for these inks? Lipstick Jungle. But I'm going to stamp that third layer right on top. So pretty. Love that. And I haven't did a layering stamp set in a while, so this was just lovely. Now I'm going to take the second layer of my rosebud and then stamp right over that second layer again. And I like the two-tone with the darker ink better. Okay. In the stamp set, there's a rosebud stem. I'm going to grab that, and I'm going to be using a olive branch ink. And we're going to stamp our stem right below our rosebud here. And the third one, I got my rosebud, I got a little too close. So we're going to do a little more stamping. And I thought this would be, let's try some different colors. So I'm going to go in with my lightest pink, which is pink tutu. We'll stamp that a couple times. And then I'm going to go in with my darkest pink, which is the Lipstick Jungle. So we'll have some coral colored rosebuds and some pink colored rosebuds. And then we'll stamp our stems below there. I just made it sure I spread them out a little bit. Okay, now we're going to stamp our leaves. The leaves have 2 different layers. So the inks that I'm using are the olive branch, which is the darker ink, and then I'm going to bring in some key lime pie, which is a mid-tone ink. I'm just going to mount all of my leaves, both the first layer and the second layer, on my acrylic blocks. Just going to make it easier for me when I stamp. Starting with the key lime pie, key lime pie. We're going to ink up our largest leaf and our medium-sized leaf here, and we'll stamp the largest one 3 times, and then the smaller one here we're going to stamp just a couple times. And then I thought, well, we'll stamp it on the rose buds too. So we'll grab that sheet and just going to add a leaf to a couple of our flowers here. Lovely. Now we're going to take our darkest ink, which is the olive branch, and we'll do our second layer, and it just creates beautiful layers. Love that. Forgot how fun this was. And we'll do our largest leaves. And they are super easy to line up. Okay, after all of our images are stamped, we are going to fussy cut each one of our images out, and I'm just using my scissors. Once we have all of our elements cut out, we're going to work on our background. I have a piece of white cardstock, and we're going to take the largest die in the set, and it's so gorgeous. I'm going to place that on a piece of white cardstock. Now if you just die cut it like this, it will create a background panel, but if you add the centerpiece, it's going to create a frame. So there we have it, and it has embossed detail too, which is just gorgeous. You can see once the light hits it that embossed detail. Okay, I'm going to use a piece of black cardstock, and we're going to stamp our sentiment. For this I'm going to be using the snowy white ink, and I chose the sentiment that says "Have a lovely day." Of course, if I'm going to make my very first card with a stamp set, we're going to use this fun sentiment. I'm going to stamp that on black cardstock, and it just wasn't as bright as I wanted it to be. So while the ink was still wet, I'm going to grab my white embossing powder and go over it. We'll take my heat gun and we'll go ahead and melt that. Now the hybrid inks dry usually pretty fast, so I think if you were to let it sit a couple minutes, I don't think the ink would stick to it. But it's turned out great. Okay, we're going to use my frame as a guide, and I drew a rectangle on my card base, and I wanted to create a background, and so I'm going to pull out my Plaid stencil. I love the stencil. I think it's just gorgeous. I'm just placing some painter's tape over it to secure it down to my card base. Now I was going to use a blue background, and then I thought, no, we'll create a corally background. So we're going to use those same 3 colors we used for our roses, but this time we're going to do a little ink blending. That's the great thing about these hybrid inks, is they blend beautifully. And this is not even Strathmore Bristol smooth cardstock. It's just my heavyweight card base, but it just blends so nice. Starting with my lightest ink, again, this pink tutu, I'm going to add some shading, and then we'll add a little bit of shading with the Lipstick Jungle. And right now we're just at the pink stage, so we're going to use our flesh colored ink, and we're going to create a corally background with that. And this stencil, there is no wrongdoing. You could blotch it and it will still turn out beautiful. Okay, we're just going to pick this up. And I made sure I stayed inside my pencil marks because I wanted my outline, my frame area to be white. But I did add foam tape behind my frame, and then I'm just using an eraser to erase my pencil marks. And then I placed that on my card base. I fishtailed the right end of my sentiment here. And I did add foam tape behind there as well. Just making sure it's straight. Now we get the fun part of arranging our flowers here. We're going to be a little florist. I'm adding foam tape to it just for a little bit of added dimension. And I'm just kind of placing my rosebuds to the left of my sentiment. And then I did go on the bottom underneath the sentiment also, just in that corner, kind of creating a little floral cluster. Isn't that so pretty? I just love that. Okay, in the stamp set, there's a 3-dot cluster. We're going to use that, but this time I want to pull up some of that black. So I'm going to use my Raven ink. It's like a jet black ink. I'll ink up this little dot cluster. add a few dots here and there. Now my intention was to do a third dot cluster on that bottom left corner, but there was just no room. So it kind of threw me off a little bit. So I added another one there, and it just wasn't balancing right for me. So I'm kind of rearranging my little floral arrangements here. I ended up removing the leaves off the bottom and pushing up my flower just a little bit, and then I can stamp my 3-dot cluster on the bottom. And I'm liking that a lot better. And I did take one of my leaves from the bottom and pull it up above my sentiment, covering up that one dot cluster that was closest right above the have. And I just think that looks a lot more balanced. Okay, there's a butterfly in the stamp set, so I thought we would just stamp that, and we're going to create I'm not going to color it in, I'm just going to use my black ink. We'll stamp that on a piece of white cardstock, and then I'm going to fussy cut that out. I did add a little piece of foam tape behind it, and I placed that on my rose there. For bells and whistles, I'm going to add a little bit of sparkle with some glitter, iridescent glitter drops. And I did go over the little white, black dots, but when it dries iridescent. Kind of a bluishy color. But that's my card for today. I tried to get close-up pictures where you could see the iridescent look. It's so pretty. It's just not quite dry yet, but it does add so much. And I did add a little bit of sparkle to my roses too. But that's my project for today. Thanks so much for joining me. Again, links will be below if you're interested. I wish you a lovely day, and we will see you again soon. Bye-bye.